second session of the CME, which is all about pain. First speaker of this session is Dr. Mujahid Jamil. He is Assistant Professor in Aga Khan University Hospital in Department of Orthopedics.
First of all, I would like to congratulate Pakistan Islamic Medical Association for having a wonderful crowd on a Sunday morning for a very valid CME program. And I am thankful to them for inviting me to this forum. So my topic for today's chronic joint pain, when to go for surgery. Just for my credentials, I have mentioned over here that I have done FCPS and FRCS Orth, and I have done some consecutive fellowships in hip and knee replacement surgery from UK. So when I was thinking about this presentation, I thought I should have some clear aims and objectives for the audience, and these are mentioned over here in the slide. The first is to discuss the concept and various myths of non-surgical options of joint pain. Second is to increase awareness and confidence about joint replacement surgery in the current treatment algorithm. And the third is, of course, if you have got any questions, I will be very happy to answer them. So joint pain is one of the most common reasons to seek medical help in every community around the globe. This pain can be persistent, very severe and disabling, and often associated with depression and anxiety. When I say often, you would notice, if you start to notice, that most of these elderly people have an element of depression and anxiety because of this chronic pain. And this is a very important point to consider right from the beginning. Traditionally, we manage this pain by focusing on the biology, just looking at it, establishing a diagnosis, and then, okay, start some pain medications. But it actually needs a rather more comprehensive approach, because it's not only the joint pain, it's the whole person that we are treating. So that is one of the focus of my presentation today. So what do I do in my practice as a clinician like yourself? I try to address the patient on a comprehensive basis rather than focusing on a knee or hip, for instance. And this approach has been mentioned very frequently in the Australian orthopedic literature, which is called as biopsychosocial approach. And I think it's very valid for all the patients around the globe, and probably more valid in our circumstances. Biopsychosocial is a combination of the biology, which means what the problem is. Is it osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, which we are inclined to most of the time as practicing clinicians. Psychological is the associated factors of anxiety and depression and emotions with the disease, which is very important. Because if a person is psychologically depressed and anxious and is worried all the time, whatever you do to the treatment, it's not going to work very well. It will take away the problem temporarily, but as a whole, the problem will not be solved. And then the social circumstances are very important. Social circumstances means way of living, relatives, combined family, living alone, dependent, in nursing home, what? Because that dictates the level of activity, and that dictates a lot to the problem that we are trying to address. So for every patient that comes to me for knee or hip problem, I have got a 3-page pro forma to fill in all these things and document it for every single patient, so that we can then make a plan as to how we address this particular patient. And then I go on with a combination of non-pharmacological and pharmacological treatment together, one by one, together, step ahead, step back, which is the first step. And I always consider referring it to anybody else. Being an orthopedic surgeon, I don't mean that I am the surgeon, so I'll take care of the problem. And I think that is an inherent problem with all of us. If I am the rheumatologist, I am biased with rheumatological treatment most of the time. I would think of giving injections and steroids and blah, blah, blah. But I think we should have a balanced approach, thinking all the time whether this patient need any other help. For instance, medical problem leading to repeated falls, leading to exaggeration of hip or knee arthritis. For example, is it a rheumatoid arthritis? Either we should refer this patient to a rheumatologist. He would cure this patient with medications alone rather than me putting a knife on the knee. And also elderly medicine, rehabilitation and physiotherapy. And then, of course, surgery is the last or maybe one of the main way of treating these patients. So the first step is complete pain assessment, which is the biopsychosocial approach, as I said, and it includes all of these things which I have mentioned in circles over here. So the comprehensive history taking, which we used to learn in the medical school, I think it is valid and it should be valid and it should be there all the time till the last patient we see in our clinic. So till we are practicing regardless of our level. Then a comprehensive physical examination valid for knee and hip pain, referred pain like spinal pathology or rheumatological pain. And then, as I said, establishing the biology, which means that we should clarify the etiology, document it, and the cause of the pain, and all other factors which I mentioned, social circumstances, financial circumstances, anxiety, depression. So unless we explore all these venues, we cannot make a realistic goal, a good plan for a particular patient. The same goes for the pain itself. There are lots of scales which you should document every time the patient comes to the clinic. So there are various ways and means. The simplest one and the most easy one to reproduce for any group of patients is the middle one, numeric scale, 1 out of 10. So just document the first visit, and then even after giving paracetamol, steroid injection, whatever you say, after 3 months comes again. So you should document the way the patient has responded to a particular treatment. Then of course we should never ever miss the red flags. We don't want to, in an elective busy situation, try to ignore the patient who's got septic arthritis, for instance, or has got something else rather than knee pain itself. So always watch out for these ones, worth mentioning. So this slide is just to summarize again. Complete assessment of pain is very important rather than focusing on one particular modality of treatment. So that would include functional assessment, including all the details. How does the elderly grandma or the granddad coming to a clinic is sitting? Does she uses a stick? Does he walks without a support? Does he uses commode or Indian toilet? Is he somebody who's just offering prayers and eating 2 times a day and going to sleep, or he's more active in social circles and goes around quite a bit? Plus, as I said before, the psychological aspects of a particular patient, including depression, anxiety, drug abuses and all that kind of thing, plus previous medications and the response to previous medications. So after that, we should be able to establish a realistic plan or a goal for a particular patient. And the first step to improve the patient pain is to educate the patient about lifestyle and activity modification, followed by the patient contribution in decision making. That is very important. I don't like the sort of say prevalent local culture of dictating the patient. आप ये कर लें, आपको ऐसे करना चाहिए. Well, yeah, we are physicians, we can try and guide them, but we should try and get them in the decision making process to make it more easy, palatable approach towards treatment rather than dictating them to do this and then just get away from the clinic. And then multimodal approach. So always consider referrals. Lifestyle modification. What is lifestyle modification? These are actually attention to details. So for instance, if somebody has come to you 60 plus, osteoarthritis, knee pain, even if you tell them not to sit on the floors, which may be their culture for periods of year and years, if you ask them and request them to change the way they go to the toilet, so sitting on a commode rather than Indian type of toilet, if you tell them to avoid uneven surfaces and avoid flights of stairs whenever they can, 50% of their pain will go down, because you have to tell them that your knee was not as good as it was, so you cannot use it as good as it was. So a little bit of pulling back and educating them, which takes some time, and that is why it is difficult, rather than writing them a strong NSAID and getting away from them, is important. So 50% of the joint pain will settle if you tell them these things. Then weight loss is extremely important, and dietary modification does help. If you look at the weight loss, it's very clearly mentioned here on a scientific basis. It's not that I am saying by losing 1 kg, that's how it makes a difference. You are loading yourself with almost 5,000 less kilograms every 1 kilometer walked. So how can not on earth it would make no difference in the joint pain? It will make a difference. So if you tell them the fact, it's difficult, very difficult to reduce weight. It needs commitment and patience and sacrifice. But you have to persuade them to do this, because it helps on a permanent long-term basis without using any fancy medications. So moderate weight loss definitely helps, and weight, if you are carrying less weight on your body, you are less likely to have osteoarthritis, or maybe I say if not escaping osteoarthritis, you would have less symptoms of osteoarthritis. So weight loss is important, it does matter. Diet and joint pain, well, there is no specific formula to say, well, if you eat these things for 3 years of period, you will have no pain. But these things are research proven, which are mentioned over here. So you can ask them to use olive oil, for instance, especially in rheumatoid arthritis patients. You can ask them to avoid high heat cooked foods. And you can ask them to use more vitamin C rich foods to have less symptoms of arthritic joints. And then exercise. Exercise, again, it takes some time. Exercise doesn't mean you go to the gym. You would have to have a special club, and you would have to be in elite class to go to a particular area to do exercise. You can tell them simple exercises, which I have in my clinic have programmed, like for instance, knee conditioning program, back conditioning program. They are leaflets with pictorial representation, straight leg raises, a little bit of knee flexion, a little bit of knee extension, and all that kind of thing, which does help to improve the flexibility, reduce stiffness, increase muscle strength, and therefore reduce the symptoms and keep you going. And at the end of the day, the exercise is still productive, because even if you can't escape joint replacement, you will be able to cope up with the stress of surgery, and the rehabilitation after surgery will be quicker if you are somebody who had lots of exercise as compared to somebody who has just been on bed and had knee replacement surgery. So exercise is very important as well. I thought these things are very important to mention because they are very prevalent. There are myths about it. You do ultrasound, लगा दें डॉक्टर साहब गरम कर देता है, ये कर देता है, वो कर देता है, tense कर लो, फलाना कर लो. All these things, scientifically speaking, have no or very limited value as a temporizing measure. They, to my view, they just act as psychological temporizing measure to reduce pain and feel better. They don't do anything to the arthritic joint. They don't cure the problem. Then complementary medicine. So if you, I would invite all of you to go to the Arthritis Research UK website. It's a very useful website with free information on arthritis, and everything which is pasted on the website is evidence-based. So they did a very interesting thing. What they did was they explored all these complementary type of medications which are used globally around the world in different areas. Like, for instance, Chinese people use devil's claw and Ji Sheng Wong and all that kind of stuff. And in Bangladesh, there are different myths about some special type of fishes and their extracts. In Pakistan, we all know this haldi and all that kind of thing. So they gathered all those kind of things from all around the world, and they scientifically addressed whether it works or not, what are the ingredients, is it really worth it. So they, at the end of the day, have concluded, they investigated around 22 such things, and they concluded that all of these are, at the end of the day, work by analgesic mechanism. So they kill the pain. They are like NSAIDs. Maybe they are less harmful, but so you can use them, but it's not, again, it's not going to take away the problem. So medicines, we are all physicians, we all know the side effects and all that. So again, they have got, what are we doing by using medications? We are just controlling the pain, not the reason for pain. So cautious use of various combinations of medications are always advised because of lots of reasons that we are well aware of. Side effects of NSAIDs, side effects of opioids, overdosage of paracetamol. So they can be used. I use them, but very cautiously, and as I said, documented with respect to the response to treatment, and then gauged accordingly in the subsequent visits at your clinic of the patient. Then intra-articular injections, they are very important to mention because they are very common. Everybody who has got the skill of putting an injection into the knee has a temptation to use them, and they are of three types. One is viscosupplementation, second is steroid injection, and the third, which are recently introduced, are the PRP or the platelet-rich plasma injection. So viscosupplementation, they were initially driven by the American pharmaceutical industry. The thing to understand is that hyaluronic acid and glucosamine, both of them are ingredients of articular cartilage, but they are the ingredients which are less than 20% of the articular cartilage structure itself. We don't know how it works and what does it do. What we do know is that 50% of the patients with early arthritis will have some pain relief for a short period of time if you inject the knee with hyaluronic acid. So initially it came at full pace from US and everybody was using it in early 90s or something like that. But if you now go to the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons website on their own clinical guidelines, they would say no use. So the European literature is a little bit balanced. They would say, well, you can use it, it's worth a try because it's less invasive and it may well offer some symptomatic relief. So I tend to go on that side. In people who are desperate, who have used medication or are having too many medications already and too much of pain, I educate them and I try these injections, which are viscosupplements. Steroids, I would tend to discourage because steroid itself can induce inflammation and articular cartilage destruction. But I use them as well only in desperate situation where there is too much pain, acute inflammation, and I'm sure that there is no sepsis in the joint. So I would use it for an elderly mom or dad who comes to the clinic and says, very, very painful, Dr. Saab. So I use them. But I tend to discourage the practice कि भाई हर 3 महीने बाद आके एक इंजेक्शन लगवा लो और खुश रहो. That is wrong. That should be discouraged. Oral steroids, so there is no point in using it unless by a rheumatological person who knows what he is using. Otherwise, जो common culture अभी भी unfortunately है कि जी बस वो खरबूजे के बीज वाली टैबलेट दे दो 5-5, 10-10 खाई जाओ जब तक कि किसी और वजह से वो मसला ना हो जाए. That should be discouraged. That is criminal. Third is platelet-rich plasma, PRP जिसको commonly कहते हैं. बहुत इसी तरह जिस तरह ग्लूकोसामिन कॉन्ड्राइटिन सल्फेट का शुरू में आया था ना कि बस लगाई जाओ और बस सब ठीक हो जाएगा, इसी तरह आजकल बहुत फैला हुआ है PRP पता नहीं क्या करता है PRP. What is platelet-rich plasma? Platelet, we commonly know them as blood clotting. So if we use platelets, they have got growth factors as well. So they are concentrate of platelets. In arthritis, for joint pain, they are no good, more better than the glucosamine chondroitin sulfate. Then the last resort is surgery. So if you have exhausted or tried everything else, then surgery is something that should be seriously considered and a referral should be made to an orthopedic surgeon who is trained to do these procedures. And the message that I want to give to you is that total knee replacement is not the answer for every patient. There are other operations available, which include arthroscopy with some limited role, which include unicompartmental knee replacement or patellofemoral knee replacement. And then, if all 3 compartments are involved, then you can do total knee replacement. Unfortunately, in our circumstances, every knee which is arthritic, people are just putting in total knee replacement. The advantage of unicompartmental versus total knee is that you can still squat. You can still have the same feeling as your own knee, and it is as good as your total knee replacement with a survival of up to 20 years. The same goes for hip arthritis. Every arthritic hip is not for joint replacement. This hip arthroscopy is the most discussed subject in orthopedic community for the last 10 to 15 years because we have now realized that some hips are of different shape, and if we give them a different shape by doing a hip arthroscopy, then the arthritis progression and symptoms can be delayed for about 5 to 7 years period without having joint replacement as a last resort. Joint replacement surgery, people in our culture in particular are afraid of always when you offer them, and then they just tend to say, well, okay, I'm probably with the wrong doctor. ठीक है, अपनी perception है. People have their own right not to have surgery. But it's a very successful procedure. It is gaining popularity, and you can see the numbers over here across the globe. And even I don't know the national number for Pakistan, unfortunately. The arthroplasty registry is established, and we are getting the numbers, but I can tell you the AHA numbers which are mentioned here. So it's popular and it's successful. If it was not popular or not successful, then you could have said, well, it's still in evolution, but it's an established procedure and can be done safely. And this is another slide just to emphasize how it has evolved. If you look at the graph, which is coming as yellow on the slide, this is the rate of revision in the beginning from 1976 to 1985. So the 5-year rate of revision at that period was up to 20%. But now that 5-year rate of revision has come to the same percentage at 18 years in the recent years. So over 18 years, the revision rate has gone substantially down just because we have got more trained surgeons, we have got better implant, we have got better perioperative care. So, as I said, all these factors have made this procedure relatively easier, more successful, and easier for the patients to rehabilitate. And in developed worlds, we are moving towards day care joint replacement surgery, computer navigated for more precision, all that kind of thing. So these are just a few examples to show you that if you look at this knee, this is not for intra-articular injection, it's bone on bone. You know, it's very obvious. दीवार पे लिखा हुआ है. अब इसके लिए आप उससे कहें कि जी मेरे से आके 3 स्टेरॉइड के इंजेक्शन लगवा लो या PRP लगा लो, it will be a waste of patient time, finances, and it will only result in frustration. So bilateral knee replacement and even bilateral hip replacements can be done very easily. We do it at AKU. This is a classic example. Initially people would used to think कि भाई 60 साल के जब तक ना हो जाओ जब तक joint replacement नहीं हो सकती. अब ऐसा नहीं है. If the BMW 7 and 8 and 9 series have come into play, then there are good materials that you could use. Ceramic on ceramic hai. It lasts for good 40 years. Even if you do it younger patients, it lasts very well and it works very well. So this is an example of bilateral hip replacement. This is again the same example. It was a patient from Quetta और वो ना कि बस नहीं करना, कुछ नहीं हाथ लगाना, वो बेचारी 30 साल 32 साल की लड़की, you know, dire circumstances, can't walk, labeled as disabled person, can't do anything, just got into the corner. So we did a bilateral hip replacement and she is doing very well. And the way the perioperative care in terms of anesthetics and assessment has evolved, we can even do one hip and one knee on the contralateral side at the same time, which is an example here. So I did a hip on one side and a knee on the other side, put the bone from the knee into the hip to augment the biological grafting kind of thing on this patient. So to answer the first slide, when to go for surgery, this is probably the best to present in the last, which is National Institute of Clinical Excellence UK guidelines. This is a body which works on the basis of recent authentic evidence. So they say that before joint replacement surgery, ensure that patient has been offered at least one core non-surgical treatment modality. Consider joint replacement for people who experience symptoms and non-surgical options have failed. So surgery is not the first option, but it is definitely one option which works very well. And then consider joint replacement before there is prolonged and established functional limitation and severe pain. I think this is the most important sentence, and if we can take this message home, that will serve the purpose. In our population, joint replacement does not usually work because people take it too long. Postpone करते रहते, and they fail to realize कि knee के साथ साथ बकिया body भी खराब हो रही है, proprioception, balance, walking ability, mental capacity, comorbid condition, everything is increasing. तो जैसे ही लगे कि नहीं काम कर रहा, we should refer it to an expert. So to summarize, comprehensive pain assessment with biopsychosocial approach, patient contribution in decision making is very vital. Spend more time on lifestyle and activity modification rather than flipping around and changing medications of different combination. Injections are temporizing measures in selected cases only. They should not be given on a continued basis every 6 months, 3 months. And joint replacement is extremely successful option, but don't miss the time zone. Do it when it is the right time. Don't delay it too much because otherwise you won't enjoy the benefit of it. So thank you very much.